Lauryn, why do you think this matters that teachers really get their stuff
Oh
together?
my God. Well, it's especially difficult in this time period right now where we have ultimate chaos, and you're trying to take something that's really should be an in-person thing and turn it into a remote thing. So everything is chaotic right now. So getting organized is really important because it makes it less stressful for everyone. It shows your students that you're confident, that you can lead a classroom, which is really important. You want them to feel secure right now. It is helpful for actually like running your class, for keeping it going, because you don't have any in-person time to say like, whoops, I'm sorry, like I didn't get this to you. Like your classroom time is at a distance. Like, so you have to be on time and giving like the right things and the right links. Otherwise, things are just going to fall apart.
I
And
would
you
just
don't want them.
add that you have to be 3 times more organized online than in person.
Yes.
Do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just because you don't have that personal connection.
Okay, so let's talk about just a couple basic things that people can do to get organized. I really like to use Google Drive because a lot of students already have Gmail addresses, and so you don't have to make them relearn some new platform that they're not familiar with. Because
Right.
I know at RISD where I teach, we were told to use Zoom, and I'm like, I've never used Zoom. I asked my students, none of them had ever used Zoom. And I'm like, let's just use the stuff we already know how to use. And so what I have set up is a class folder in Google Drive. So I have a folder for every student. I have slideshows that they can access, and I keep all of the course handouts there. Now, the student folders, I think, are especially important because that's home base for them. That's a place where they can store their homework images. We can actually keep some of their critique files in there and record group video calls and have them there for everybody to access. So I think the fewer places you put your content, the better. If you give them 18 sites, they're going to just die.
I think that you should give a differentiation for people because last night you said that you wanted students to contact you on like several places, like as many places as possible. Give them options. Like, what's the difference between that and between having like this one location that you're talking about for, uh, the classroom?
Okay, let's get more specific. What I would recommend you guys do for the full out explanation, watch the stream that I did yesterday because you sometimes want many platforms for communication, but I do think for actual content like course handouts and homework images, consolidate that in Google Drive. So watch that video because that'll be a little bit more clear. Hey guys, thanks for joining 10,000 Crows, Jane, Diamond, and Christina. All right, I'm going to suggest to offer a variety of critique formats. Some are more formal, some are really casual. You can have small group critiques, you can also have individual critiques. And again, you may not want all of those variety of critiques, but we're going to give you all the options and then you can pick and choose the ones that are best suited for your students. So, Lauryn, we're going to start out with group critiques. I am using Skype. I'm not using Zoom. Can you tell everybody why we made that decision as a class?
Oh, well, so the majority of us have used Skype at one point or another in our lives. It's really easy to put together a group call. Like, we just have all those skills already. Whereas with Zoom, I just had a Zoom meeting today. It was like okay, but there are these weird time limits if you don't have the pro version. It like cuts you off when you try to talk. Like if there are two people that talk over each other, it cuts one person off, which makes it really difficult to understand what's going on in a conversation. Skype doesn't have that same auto cutoff thing, which even though it's not good to talk over each other, I think that it's important to hear everything that's going on in the room.
I asked my students, I said, how many of you have used Zoom before? Nobody, including myself. I said, how many of you have a Skype account and have used it? Every single hand went up. So even if your school is saying doing Canvas or Blackboard or whatever thing, figure out what your students actually have used before. Because teaching online is challenging, and the fewer barriers you have, the easier everything is going to go. Okay, group video calls are tricky though, because sometimes there's a lag in the internet, which we have definitely
Yeah.
experienced at Art Prof. Lauryn, I think you should tell them how that
Oh,
goes.
oh my God. So, guys, yeah, I have always lived in an area, a rural area with terrible internet every single time. It just is awful, and all my calls lag. And there are some tips and tricks to this. Like one of them I find is if you shut off your video and just go to audio, that helps. You can also do it through your phone, or if you have a computer but no internet, you can put a hotspot on your phone sometimes and do it that way. You want to be able to participate, but try to use as little bandwidth as possible.
I also find it handy to have students raise their hands. Normally, in a brick and mortar classroom, I never do that. We just talk. But the thing is, again, it's really tricky because sometimes you're either getting a really long, awkward pause or you're talking all over each other. And a lot of that's the lag and just the number of people. So it's a little dippy to raise your hand during a Skype call, but it actually works. I find it very helpful. It's just one little thing that you guys can do. Those of you who are watching right now, I'd like to know how many of you are teachers. Has your classroom gone remote? And for those of you guys who watch us regularly, do you have tips for teachers for learning online? Like, what helps you learn online? Is there a particular format that's better? I'd love for both audiences to help each other out. All right, next thing, I think it's really helpful to send the students the work you're going to critique at the Skype call before the Skype call so they have a chance to preview it. Lauryn, why do you think that might make a difference?
I find in art critiques, there's usually this gap of, you need to spend some time with the work first. Even in my in-person classes, we will spend 5 to 10 minutes just looking at the work, walking around looking at the work. So you want the equivalent for this online version. So if you have everybody look at the work first, then they can come in and use these precious minutes in person to actually talk about the work rather than just staring at it in a weird, awkward screen.
The other thing is that usually my critiques at RISD are long. I mean, sometimes they're 3 or 4 hours long. I mean, I tell everybody for the group calls that it's a lot better to only have small groups of students. Like, I would never run a video call with 16 students. That would be insane.
Oh yeah,
So I'm splitting them up to 4 to 6.
that'd be really chaotic. I think we've done calls together once where we have like interns and TAs and everybody together, and that's just like crazy. Everybody only gets like 2 seconds of time to say what they want to say. So it's also better for people getting out there, like being able to express themselves, to have a smaller group.
I know a lot of teachers are talking about, okay, how do we get students to comment on other students' work, maybe outside of a group critique? And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, we could have a Google Doc and the students could go in and they could type critiques. But I can tell you
Oh,
from my point of view, I hate typing
oh
critiques.
yeah, yeah, no.
It's so slow. I think I speak much better than I write. And you just lose all the nuance of that. I don't know. Do you like typing critiques, Lauryn?
Oh, I've got some horror stories about it actually. I taught a higher ed class recently, and the students were great in person. They were wonderful, but every time I had them, gave them an assignment to type a critique for another student, it was like they just their brains like turned off or something. Like it's a lot, and I feel the same way. It's a lot of work. You go into this weird like international art English mode where you try to use big fancy words. Like artists, it's just a thing. Artists feel like they don't know how to write. Like writing is really hard, and so when you're critiquing something, you feel like you have to write it. And it comes out so much easier if you just speak about it. It's okay to use like silly words or to have a thought that kind of meanders and then comes to where it needs to go. That all gets lost when you're trying to type out a critique, and then it just ends up being really frustrating.
Right. And I also think that not everybody's a good writer, and some students are probably really good speaking in a critique, but maybe struggle with writing. And it
Oh,
really is a completely separate skill than
actually,
critiquing.
another thing, and this is again maybe a little bit more of a higher ed thing, maybe not. No, this is also true in uh, K through 12 schools, is that a lot of students, English is not their first language. And sometimes, I mean, it depends on the student, but sometimes typing, trying to write a comment in English and getting that grammar and stuff right is a lot harder than just kind of struggling through it, like by speaking.
Although I have found that for a lot of students for English is not their first language, sometimes they write better than they can speak. Like actually speaking at a critique for some of them is more intimidating. But again, it depends on the student. I mean, you can't really say that's the case for everybody. Let's
Right.
see. That salty person says they have a class of 32 students. Oh my God, that is
That's
a huge
crazy.
class. Wow, your teacher is a hero. Diamond Cat is saying, what are some things teachers want to know? I'm in high school. May not be as much help for college professors, but ask away. Thank you very much, Diamond Cat. That's really great because teachers, we need to talk to students about this. We need to say, is this working? What can we do? Because we're all making this up as we go along. There was no plan. This just happened. And now
Yeah.
we're just doing it. Let's
Yeah.
see.
We're
That
really,
salty person says they use Google Meets. People put questions so the teacher can tell everyone to stop talking so they can answer the question.
yeah, actually, that's a really good point. One thing that I do like is having the chat up while being in either like a Skype meeting or a Google Meets meeting or something like that. It allows for, say, someone to put in like a art history reference link or an image link, or just type in a comment, a quick comment without disrupting the flow of the conversation. So having both things going on at the same time, I find is really helpful.
Right, for sure. And let's see. That salty person says, for us, we're required online classes because of COVID. Yeah, I think it really just is depending on the school. And actually, at the school I teach at, it's really different depending on your professor. Like some teachers are not very tech savvy. And I feel lucky because I've been teaching online for 5 years. And so I have everything set up and ready to go. But if you don't, it's a lot of work to
Yeah.
transition and retranslate all of your stuff into an online format. David is saying, first online class on Monday. None of my teachers want to do video interaction. Really?
I think, well, I understand this. So I remember when we first started transitioning to video, and all of us thought it was really weird. It's kind of, you get a little bit of stage fright at first. And also, I feel like a lot of teachers that I've talked to are of I'm gonna say a generation that has used technology a bit less than their students. I mean, I'm even at that point where I don't know the technology that my students are using anymore. So it is really tough to be learning that and running a class at the same time.
Oh no, it's so much to do
Yeah.
all at once. So
Yeah.
I definitely sympathize. But we were talking in the stream that I did yesterday. Your students are going to be okay with that. They know that we're all scrambling, they know we're all trying to figure it out. And so I don't think any of us should worry about messing up and not doing things right. I think that's inevitable given the situation. Matthew is saying, I teach high school ceramics. District is thinking about doing online classes for a few weeks. Yeah, I mean, RISD's done for the rest of the year. We're not coming back this year. So we're going to be 2 months online. Okay,
What are,
the other thing about video calls, this depends on your school, obviously, but at RISD, I have a lot of international students, and a lot of them might not be in the same time zone. And so running a group call can be a little tricky for that reason. And that's why I'm going to recommend that you record the group video calls. So if there's a student who lives on the other side of the world and they just cannot wake up at 3 a.m. to come to the call, which your average person does not want to do, record it so they can see it and maybe you can accommodate them by having another individual Skype call. There's ways around that. I just would be conscious about that because I feel like a lot of faculty, it's easy to make assumptions that everybody's in the US, but they're not. There's a lot of international students.
Yeah.
By the way, we do have a section on ourprof.org, which has tons of critique videos. And so teachers use this as a resource. Have the students watch these critiques. They can even do written feedback based on them. So that's a great resource for you to tap into.
Felicia's got a great question here that transitions into our next point. How do you get students to take and post good photos of their art that are not huge files?
Okay, that's actually tip number 3. So let's talk about tip number 2, and we will definitely get to that, Felicia. So here's another option, is you can record an audio critique for an individual student. So if I'm critiquing Sarah's drawing, I just record a short audio file, and you can do it on your phone. You just upload it straight from the voice memo right into the student's folder in Google Drive. So you don't have to do anything on a laptop, actually. So Lauryn, do you think this is a good option if people don't really want to be on video?
Oh yeah, I love the audio. The audio is so much less stressful, and actually that the audio is also a little bit weird at first, but it, coming from a class where a lot of critiques are recorded anyways, it's not such a huge jump. All you do, and it's a really small file too, all you do is press play, you talk into it, you send it to where it needs to go. It's very, very little work on anyone's part.
Ian is saying, I'm dyslexic. I find typing or reading a critique overly time consuming. A visual is best for me to explain it talking to me. Yeah, I think you don't know what people's abilities are in terms of writing and reading, because it's a completely different skill set than what we're typically using in the classroom. Oh, we've got somebody, Andreas from Indonesia. Really cool. And Lunja is saying the audio thing is the basis for the success of WeChat.
Yeah.
Makes everything so, oh, we love WeChat, don't we, Lauryn?
That's great. Yeah, when we went to China, we got really into WeChat, which is like a lot more expansive than I think a lot of the apps that we have in the US. And I totally got hooked on sending voice messages, especially since like a lot of people that we were talking to, like we don't necessarily even share the same like keyboard with. So it was really great for getting information across really quickly. Also, I love the little emojis, the little GIFs that you can put in.
They're way better than the ones we have in the US.
Yeah. I am of the opinion that GIFs are great for crits. Great reaction pictures. Anyway.
You can record audio critiques. That's a really, really good option. But if you can do it, if you can pull it off and do some videos for your students, I mean, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to send them a video file and I'm going to put it in my drive, and that'll just be a more personal way for me to communicate with them. Because I think what frustrates me so much is, at RISD at least, I was just starting to get to know the students. It was almost midterm, and I feel like not having that face-to-face interaction is really hard. And so if they can see your face, even if it's like crappy video and stuff, I think that does make a difference. But again, I totally get it if audio is a better fit for you as a teacher. Now, this brings up another issue, which is how do you get the students to critique other students' work outside of a group video call? I'm going to say let them pick. If they want to record a short audio clip, that's great. If they want to type it, that's fine. At the very least, you're giving them options. Do you think that's important, Lauryn?
Yeah, I mean, it's as we discussed earlier with, say, international students or students here in the US, like having English as a second language. Some do better with speaking, some do better with typing. So, and you know, that is also for people that English is their first language. Like, people have all different ways of communicating that they're comfortable with, and your class is much more likely to be successful if you allow them to have those options.
Well, I was saying in the stream that I did yesterday that normally I am not that accommodating to my students. I just say, here's a handout, you guys do it. And I do not bend over backwards for them. However, I am right now. And I am going the extra mile and doing a little bit more because you just don't know what situation your students are in. You have no idea. I have some kids in college. School is a much safer place than home is. And so I
Yeah.
just think being really, really flexible and being willing to accommodate is very important.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's talk about number three, which is what Felicia asked earlier. I think this is a great chance to teach your students how to photograph their artwork because it's tricky. It's not that easy to do.
This is my favorite thing. I'm like such a stickler for good photographs.
Well, why do
I
you think this matters so much as a skill, Lauren?
this is so wonderful. It's wonderful we have online instruction because, okay, several things. Okay, so as a gallery manager in my past life, when we do open calls, things get rejected because the photos are not great because you can't really tell what the artwork looks like. In this day and age, most people are not, we would hope more people would be going to museums and galleries and seeing work in person, but the reality is, like, I'm going to guess like 90% of the images that we're looking at are on a screen. So it's imperative that you have good photographs because that is the way in which all of us are communicating these days. And it is unlike, I mean, this is a very special situation, but most of your viewers are not going to be seeing your artwork in person just like across the board. When you're out in the world as an artist, at least most of the people that are now like following me or like are fans of my artwork came through online.
It's
So
rare that somebody is going to see your artwork in person before they see it on a screen.
yeah,
And I'll
yeah.
tell you, most, actually, all the time, I don't think I've ever taught a studio art class where we had time for me to demonstrate how to photograph artwork. The only class I ever did that for was a senior seminar class that I taught that was all about professional development and going
Yeah.
over that stuff. But other than that, I've never done that in demo. And so this is a chance for you to really talk to them about the importance of this. And you should critique their photos. You should say,
And
hey, the lighting's uneven here. You need to crop this better. I think that's really helpful.
yeah, I think to Felicia's specific question here, I think what is really important is making sure that, or is telling your students and reminding yourself that good photographs in this case, do not have to be ones with a fancy camera. The phones these days, the smartphones these days, take photographs that are, you know, really good enough to be able to almost create prints of at this point. Like the newer camera phones, even the old ones are pretty good. So that is a great way to take an image that is passable, that doesn't really eat up space on someone's computer.
I used to use my DSLR to photograph everything. I rarely bring it out now. I'd say 95% of the photography I do, student work, my work, is all on my smartphone because the quality is so good and it's so easy to get it into Google Drive. So I think for a lot of people, you probably do have a phone camera that's totally sufficient for an online crit. The other cool thing is I know I'm going to encourage my students, don't just take photos of just the final artwork. If you made thumbnail sketches, if it's a very detailed piece, you can shoot some photos of some close ups. You could even include some works in progress. And then, what's even better, then the students have so many photos of their artwork and
Yeah.
they can put it on Instagram, they can have it in stock for their portfolio because some students are a little lazy about
Oh,
documenting their art.
I've I've got a great story about this, Clara. Actually, so I am really a type A kind of person about documenting the progress of my paintings. And I will go from photographing like the sketches all the way up to the finished piece with like every single step in between, like the color palettes and all that. And I have been taking these things and showing them to my tutorial professor, And it's been really useful because she's actually been able to pinpoint exactly where I'm like going wrong in a piece, or like was able to figure out why I can't translate like a sketch into a big piece. And it was only because I had all that documentation. Like she wouldn't have been able to figure that out otherwise. It was really useful.
And by the way, those of you who need tips on how to photograph your artwork, we got you covered. Because in our art school portfolios guide, we have two giant pages with tons of examples. We tell you certain tips that you can do that are not difficult, but if you don't know them, they're hard to figure out. And we also give you advice for different options. So if you have no budget to work with, if you have a little bit more money, you can spend a little bit more stuff on equipment. And we also have a section on photographing 3D artwork because
Yeah.
3D artwork is hard to photograph well. Again, it's not so hard, but you have to know the tips and tricks. So go to artprof.org. You want to click on tutorials and then click on art school portfolios because this is really a thing that I think students need to learn. And it's like, why not make them learn
Yeah.
it now in this opportunity?
Just one more point about these kind of supporting images that we're talking about, like the thumbnails versus like the final piece. I also think it's really important, especially with sculpture, but also with painting and video and all of that, that you include both installation shots, like how it would generally be installed in your, most ideal world as best you can, and then also detail shots, because I think just having one image of a piece of a final piece is not enough, especially on a little screen. In fact, more and more these days when I'm on Instagram, I'm actually including detail shots of paintings that I post, like in a, what do you call it, in one of those multiple image sets, because there are things that I think are really great that totally get lost if you're just like shooting through things.
Okay, tip number 4 is doing really short critiques on Instagram. This is what I've told my students to do is that they can post their stuff and I can just write one little thing. It does not have to be super long. It's easy, it's fast, it's casual, and it's easy for both teachers and students to do it. Lauryn, why do you think this matters? Some people might say, oh, yeah, but that's just like a really quick comment. Why does that make a difference?
I think the ease of use, first of all, is really important. It keeps students engaged in the class, even when they're not like in the class. So it keeps them in the mode, in like the thinking mode. It is nice for encouragement and pointing students in the right direction. I know when I'm posting things to Instagram, my like painter friends really help me. They're like, oh, this isn't working, or I really like this. And even those small comments can like help me be like, oh, I really need to focus on this, or oh, I wasn't meaning this, I should do something else. So it's good just as like a little like, hey, like a little notification to guide you in the right direction.
You don't always need a 3 paragraph long written critique essay to get
Yeah.
good feedback. I mean, sometimes you just say, wow, people really noticed this about this painting. Maybe that's something I need to take a look at. I always read comments. I mean, Lauryn, do you ever skip over comments on Instagram?
Oh, comments are the best part. I love it when people leave comments. Like, I feel like I'm just like always looking for comments. Um, I sometimes artists will purposely put out questions like asking about a specific thing in their caption, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I also love to give comments. So it's a medium that works really well for me.
Yvonne is saying, do you create a separate Instagram account for each class and is it private? Well, what I'm doing, Yvonne, is I am telling the students to post on their accounts. And then I've told them, look, just tag me. And I have a hashtag now, Prof Lieu, and just use that hashtag. And that does two things. First of all, I get a notification because I'm tagged, but I can also tap on hashtag Prof Lieu and see, oh, these are all the students
Yeah.
that have used this hashtag. And then I can see it. And also the other students can see it. So if you're another student and you want to see, oh, what are other students that Clara has? What are they doing? And that's super fun. So you could do separate Instagram account, but this really is students who are posting and not you. So I feel like this is a really easy way to take the burden off you, because if you have to do all of it, it's a little bit too much work.
I know a ton of high school teachers that do this actually, which I find really interesting. Like they'll have a hashtag just for their class. And it's not even just art teachers, it's like all different types of teachers. I have a friend who runs a sixth grade class that has everything for her sixth grade class under one hashtag. I think it's a great idea. Also, hi, James. I used to work with James. I think this is really cool to see you on here.
Ian Jackson is saying, how about standardizing a critique so student is used to the format and what to expect? What do you think about that, Lauryn?
Um, I guess it depends on what the needs of your students are, really. If they would prefer having, I think actually, yeah, if you have beginning students that really don't know how to critique, having some kind of like structure like that could be really useful, because otherwise they could be like, I don't know what to do. I think if students feel a little bit more comfortable, I think it might be better to, provide different options just to keep things going. But certainly I think it's like a case to case basis.
I know some students, it would be nice for them to have a couple questions that say, what do you think of the media and the handling? Some people might say, what is the color scheme like? You could do something simple, but I would just say, if I were doing something like that, I would not have a huge handout with 30 questions. I probably would have like 3, and then say, here's what you start with, answer these questions, and then elaborate from there. Because I find with critiques, it's not that students can't do it, it's just that they have trouble getting started. So
Yeah,
if you just
yeah,
start it for them, they can totally take it from there.
yeah, definitely. Um, Yeah, let's see. I am definitely going to go. James says I'm definitely going to go over documenting work, lighting and temperature, etc. I love the idea of documenting from start to finish too. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. The lighting and temperature, I know that it's in the what do you call it? The resources that you're posting, Clara. But I think that it's really important to make sure, this like kills me, that students don't have shadows over their artwork, that you put it, even if you hold it in front of your face and take a photo like that can give you such like a much better image, like so much easier than having it like sitting over your table and trying to photograph something. Like make it easy for yourself. It does not have to be perfect, guys.
Right, and the tips that we offer, they're not difficult to do. It's just they're hard to figure out by yourself. That's
Yeah.
the difference. So just use our cheat sheet. We can save you guys a lot of hassle in trying to reinvent the wheel. By the way, if you guys are teachers, we have a huge area on ourprof.org with tutorials and project ideas. Some of the project ideas have videos, some of them are just lesson plans, but they all have student examples. There's all step by step lessons. And so if you're looking for something to get your students started, we've got you covered. We've been at this for a while.
They're also, what I love about them is they're also set up to be accommodating as far as materials go. I know a lot of people are stuck at home right now, don't have access to really fancy things or whatever is in their school art class. We have things that use like chipboard, like heavy paper, or just crayons, like your regular crayons. So
Or glue in magazines.
yeah, it really does not have to be fancy in that case either.
Okay, tip number 5 is you can consider doing an Instagram group chat. Again, the students are on Instagram all the time. I created a chat for my RISD students, and this is really free flow. I mean, I hope that I don't regret doing this because who knows what my students could put in there, but I'm sure they'll be fine. um, so, what I say to the students is, look, you can share works in progress, you can ask questions. It's a really safe, open place. And I say to the students, you want to be in this? Great. You don't want to be in it? That's fine, but it's here if
Yeah.
you want it. And so it's just like a nice protected space, because I know a lot of people really feel like Instagram feels like a competition. We actually did a stream a few days ago about how Instagram can sometimes have a toxic effect on artists. But I'm hoping that this is a nice space that's on Instagram that's just a little bit less public for a lot of students.
Yeah. I've definitely had these kinds of group chats, not necessarily with classrooms, but definitely when I was, remote living in New Hampshire, I would have friends from around the world that we'd be in like a chat together and post whatever it was we were working on. It was very helpful. It was very motivating too.
All right, I encourage you guys to go to our main site, artprof.org. All of the content is available and free. We've got lots of resources that are not on our YouTube channel, so take a look at that. And we hope you will join the Art Prof family by subscribing to our channel. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters. You guys keep things up and running for us. Thank you to all of you students and teachers in the chat today contributing your ideas. These conversations are so great to have. We will see you guys next time. Bye.